Good afternoon. Welcome to Museum Monday at the Sacramento History Museum. My name is Delta Pick-Mello, and it's the last Monday of the month, and so that means it's story time. Now, I love to tell all kinds of stories. I like fables and folk tales, but my favorite stories are fairy tales. Now, I know a lot of you probably know the fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty. Yeah? I don't tell that story, I'm sorry. I tell the story of Sleeping Ugly. It's by Jane Yolen, and it begins with those 4 wonderful words that start a fairy tale: once upon a time. There was a beautiful princess named Princess Miserella. And oh, she was. If you counted her eyes and her nose and her lips and all the way down to her toes. But inside, where you can't see, but it really matters, she was the wickedest, worst, most miserable princess in all the land. She chased kittens all through the castle. She liked to step on puppy dog tails. She sometimes used bad words. And she threw pies in the cook's face. And she never, not even once, said thank you or please. And besides that, she told lies. Now, in that same kingdom, in the middle of the woods, there lived a poor orphan named Plain Jane. Oh, and she certainly was. Her hair was short and turned down, kind of like this. Her nose was long and turned up, and even if they had been the other way around, she would not have been a great beauty. But on the inside, where it's hidden and it really counts, she had a heart of gold. She loved nature and animals and everything from insects to frogs to birds and bees. She loved children, and for some reason, she was always kind to strange little old ladies. Now, one day, Princess Miserella rode out of the palace in a huff. Oh, you all know what a huff is, don't you? No, it's not a type of carriage. It's a temper tantrum, her usual kind. Anyway, she rode and she rode and she rode directly into the forest, her hair in shambles, and finally she was completely lost. Well, she got off the horse and slapped it for not knowing the way home. Well, the horse turned tail and headed home directly because it knew the way home all the time. It simply didn't want to take Princess Miserella. So there was the beautiful princess, looking even more beautiful than ever, when suddenly she tripped over a little old lady who was asleep underneath a tree. Now, in fairy tales, little old ladies who sleep underneath trees are usually fairies in disguise. Princess Miserella knew that, but she didn't care. She kicked her on the bottoms of her feet. "Get up and take me home." Well, the fairy got up very slowly, for the bottoms of her feet hurt, and she took the princess by her thumb and second finger. She knew that sort of princess. So together they walked and they walked and they walked even deeper into the woods until they came to a little house. It was Jane's house, and it was dreary. The floors sank, the walls stank, the roof leaked, even on sunny days. But Jane made the best of it. She planted roses around the door, she had a garden in the back, and she let all the birds and animals make their home with her, which is probably why the floors sank and the walls stank. But no one seemed to mind. "This is not my home." "Well, it's not mine either." They stepped in the house without even knocking, and there was Jane. "This is my home." She smiled a thin little smile, which did not improve her looks or the princess's mood. "Look, you take me home, and as a reward, I'll make you my maid. Some reward, thought the fairy. Look, my dear, if you could get us both home, well, I might be able to squeeze out a wish or two. Well, Princess Mizerella's little ears perked up on that one. Wishes? Well, you never said anything about wishes. You make it 3 wishes and I'll get us home. But my home is your home, if you like. Oh, my dear, such a lovely thought. And with that good thought, I will give 3 wishes to Jane. Princess Miserella was not very happy with that, and she stamped her foot. The fairy took out a pine wand out of her pocket, and she said, "Stamp your foot again, and I'll turn it to stone." Just to be mean, she stamped her foot again. Her foot turned to stone, solid as a rock. She started crying and screaming, and poor Jane, she said, I guess my first wish is that I wish you'd change her foot back. I like your manners, dear, but not your taste. However, well, Princess Miserella shook her foot. It was no longer made of stone. Well, I guess my foot must have just fallen asleep or something. She really liked to lie. And besides that, you know, that was a stupid way to waste a wish. Don't call anyone stupid unless you've been properly introduced or at least a member of the family. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Well, the fairy took that pine wand out again. She said, "You say stupid one more time, and I will make toads come out of your mouth." Stop! And as she said it, a great big toad dropped right out of her mouth onto the ground. Oh, so cute. I love toads. But I think my second wish is that you get rid of the mouth toads. She's lucky it wasn't mouth elephants. Well, Princess Miserella opened her mouth very slowly. Nothing came out but her tongue, and she pointed it at the fairy. Meh! I have had enough. I want to go home. And she grabbed Plain Jane by the arm, and the fairy said, "Wait a minute, gently now. You've got to be gentle with magic, otherwise none of us are going to go any place. You can go wherever you like, but there's only one place that I want to go, to sleep." And the fairy swung her wand so hard that it flew out of her hand and hit the wall. The wall broke, the wand broke, the spell broke, and all 3 of them dropped down to the ground and fell asleep right there. Now, this was one of those 100-year naps, you know, the ones in fairy tales, the ones that take a prince and a kiss to wake them up. So they slept in the cottage, the 3 of them, for 100 years. They slept through 3.5 wars, 6 new kings, and the invention of the sewing machine. The cottage was so far into the woods that no one even bothered to stop by, and they saw the broken wall. They didn't bother. So there they slept, and they slept, and they slept. Well, finally, after 100 years, a young prince named Jojo was wandering in the woods. He was a bird watcher. He was out looking for birds, and it started to rain, and he saw the cottage with the broken wall, so he stepped inside. And when he got there, he saw 3 women asleep on the floor with spider webs holding them down. Well, he noticed that one of them was a beautiful princess. Well, being the kind of prince that knew his fairy tales, he knew just what he had to do. But you see, Jojo was the youngest son of the youngest son of the youngest son, and he'd never kissed anyone before. except for his mother. That doesn't really count. And his father had a scratchy beard. Anyway, he thought that maybe what he should do is practice before he actually kissed the beautiful princess. So he puckered up his lips and he kissed the fairy right on the nose. She tastes kind of like cinnamon. Then he puckered up his lips and he kissed Jane right on the lips. Ah, she smells like wildflowers. Anyway, he turned to the princess and he puckered up his lips. But before he could kiss the princess, his first kisses had worked. Jane and the fairy woke up. And the fairy picked up the broken pieces of her magic wand, and Jane turned to Jojo and thought, I wish he liked me. Good wish, said the fairy, and she waved the pieces of her wand gently. Well, now, meanwhile, Prince Jojo was staring at the beautiful princess, but she seemed to be having a bad dream, and it seemed like she liked it. But suddenly he realized he knew that kind of princess. He had 3 cousins just like her. Princess Prunella, Princess Nastina, and Princess Brattina. All 3 very pretty on the outside, but ugly within. Suddenly, he remembered the smell of wildflowers, and he turned to Jane and said, Hey, I think I like you. What's your name? And so the prince and Jane lived happily ever after. It turns out the prince was pretty good with a hammer. He fixed the wall, he fixed the roof, and he built a little house next door for the fairy to live. And they used the sleeping princess. They used her as a conversation piece when friends came over to visit. They would prop her up in the corner to hold hats and coats, and they never let anyone ever kiss her awake, not even their 3 beautiful children. So, the moral of the story is, let sleeping princesses lie, or lying princesses sleep, whichever seems wisest. Thank you for joining me for Story Time, and we'll see you again on Museum Monday next week. And next month we're going to talk about fashions of the 19th century, and at the end of the month I'll have another story for you. Bye-bye.